Page 18 of our book, and this is a portrait on page 19 of our book of Forest Home, the home that Colonel French owned here in McMinnville. It was situated out about 1.5 miles out of town on the Nashville Highway, where the Smith House is located now on the left as you round the curve out there. And there is a marker there, Lucy Virginia French historical marker near the site. This was called Forest Home. This is the home where Colonel French brought Lucy when he married her and where they lived for a number of years. Their first son was born a year later after they came to live here in 1853. The house was in great need of repair after the Civil War. And the Frenches lived in Forest Home for a number of years, throughout the Civil War actually. The house was in great need of repair. The roof leaked, so Lucy Virginia French said in her diaries. And Colonel French built another house not too far away from this one, across north of Forest Home, in a similar area in McMinnville, which was called Nestledown, and they moved there, and the other children were born there, and Mrs. French died there in 1881. But it burned many years later. After she died, it burned, and Colonel French lived, I think, 11 years longer than she. He died in 1892. But the Frenches were certainly some of the more interesting people who have lived in the town through the years, and our book has a number of pictures that relate to them and are very interesting to see and to read about. One of the more interesting buildings in the town was an opera house, actually built here on Main Street, directly across from us. Our museum is in the Brinkley building at 210 East Main Street, just 2 doors up from the First National Bank. Across the street was built in 1888 by William Hutchins, who was a very wealthy mulatto living in the town, who had made a lot of money in the livery business. He was partner in a big livery business here, and it has been said that he was the wealthiest man in the town of McMinnville when he built this opera house. It was a beautiful edifice. It was the beginning of the seat of entertainment in the town. Political speeches were held there. All kinds of entertainment troupes were held there. The first gathering in the building, it is said, was to view a motion picture, which was very new at the time, and it was a great sensation for the people of the town to come and see one of the early motion pictures being made, or that had been made, actually. One of the permanent seats of the Warren County government was held, or the city government actually was held on the 2nd floor of the opera house at the time it was built. Unfortunately, through the years, it has been altered tremendously. The exterior has been altered. The building is still standing. However, it was the home for many years of King's Department Store, and then the Locks 5 and Dime store next to it. It was the seat of businesses, and the exterior was stripped of its ornamentation and looks nothing like it did in the 1880s when it was built, unfortunately. Much of the buildings, or many of the buildings of the town, have been stripped through the years of their ornamentation, unfortunately. They were very beautiful in the late 1800s and early 1900s. McMinnville, downtown McMinnville, was an extraordinarily beautiful place. To see it from an aerial view, this view is probably taken from atop one of the buildings here and was published in 1910. in a brochure regaling the town and its people. It looks like it could be downtown Chicago or one of the great cosmopolitan cities. Some of the major buildings have burned through the years. The big mercantile building, which you see here, which was at the corner of the Spring and Main Street, burned. I think in 1925 it burned. Many of the other buildings burned and were rebuilt, but those that were remained, many have remained, have been stripped of their ornamentation, so the buildings became more mundane as the years went along, and now the town has very little of the look that it had in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This image of the Opera House that we have in our book on page 21 was created in pen and ink and watercolor by Chris Keithley, who is a wonderful natural artist, and it's one of the most beautiful paintings that he has done, and a very beautiful painting of the very beautiful building. Of course, it's in black and white in our picture book. One of the most interesting men and citizens of the county of Warren was J. Fletcher Woodward, who was probably the county's or the town's first professional photographer. He was a multi-talented individual. He was a medical doctor. He was a printer. He had his own printing presses. He was an artist, an engraver. He was an inventor. He actually patented some photographic equipment in the late 1800s. And he was a man greatly ahead of his time. He was not liked by all the people of the Mcminnville. We believe that one of the reasons he was so disliked by many was that he was really a go-getter. He was very talented. He accomplished a great deal, whereas many other people just were rather apathetic about what was going on here, but he was always doing unusual things. In 1873, a town constable in Cooksey was murdered in a very controversial murder down on Depot Bottom here, down on the side of Depot Bottom, in a call house. At that time, there were many saloons in the town, and there were call houses and women who lived alongside the Depot Street down toward Depot Bottom, who entertained men. And in Cooksey was a local constable who was murdered one night. J. Fletch Woodard was accused of his murder. He was tried by jury and found guilty, and he was actually sent to prison. He was incarcerated in Mcminnville jails before he was sent to Nashville to the penitentiary. He spent about 3 years in all in prisons and jails before he was finally acquitted and released. While he was in jail, he kept copious notes of all that had transpired leading up to the murder here, and he thought he knew, or said he knew, the people who committed the murder. He wrote a little book that became notorious when it was written, and we obtained an original copy of this little book in 2000. And this is the little book. He published, all in all, about 14 books during his lifetime, or at least he lists 14 books that he published. He printed these by hand. He did the woodcuts for the books. This is a self-portrait that he did on the cover of this little book. And then on the back of the book is a woodcut showing the murder of Cooksey. But there are woodcuts throughout this little book. We obtained this very rare copy, and we published in 2001 a facsimile edition of this little book in a larger format, because the book was intact and it was very interesting. And he states in this book whom he believes and knows, actually he says, who committed this murder.